Hi, Misha here, and I thought this would be an interesting and fun topic for a hopefully quite short video. My top 5 least favorite, although I can't say hated, AKs, Kalashnikov type guns that I own. Not in the world, because that'd be easy. There'd be things, well, I think you can guess. But these are ones that I do own, but when I'm ranking them, they fall at the bottom. Now, to be honest, if I really didn't like them, I wouldn't own any of these guns. But, there has to be a favorite, and by extension, there has to be a least favorite. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this down into 5 categories. AK-47, so milled receiver, 7.62 by 39. AKM, stamped receiver, 7.62 by 39. RPK, so 1.5 stamped receiver, or other. And then AK-74, 5.45 by 39 guns. And then finally, for number 5, kind of a wild card, a random and other category. And to begin with, we have one that is not on this list. This is the good old Wasser 10. This is a newer production model that I've slightly reworked to my own specifications. I'm trying to get the stock open here. Easier said than done one-handed. There we go. I've kind of got an export configuration with the export stock and the AKM palm swells and the muzzle brake. No, I have this set up as a PM90, and I love the Wasser. It's not my favorite, and obviously I like the SAR-1 even more, but Romanian guns in general have been so many people's introduction to AKs. Once upon a time, it would have been Chinese guns, but for the last 20 plus years, Romanian guns have been the gateway for people getting into Kalashnikovs, at least 4/5, maybe even 9/10 of the time. So no, the Wasser 10 rightly continues to truck on even into 2021. And while this isn't a favorite, this is a solid place to start and a solidly average gun. And I mean that in a very positive way. So with that, let's get started with my least favorite AK-47. That's right, the Bulgarian Arsenal SA-93. This isn't going to be your typical video probably for least favorites, because I actually really like this gun. But when I was looking at my other milled guns, for example the Polish SSR-99P, or the Hungarian SLR-100H, or the Russian PLO kit build on a firing line receiver, or even the newer arsenals like the SAM-7R and SAM-7SF and SAM-5, I realized that I like them all a little bit more. Now the 99P and the 100H are kit builds, but they have original barrels and they're on original semi-automatic European-made receivers. So that's really good enough for me. Very little work is needed. They're all done. They just happen to be assembled here. However, this gun, as it was imported in 1994-95, needs a lot of work to get to this status. And that's kind of why it's the least favorite, because you can't just grab one of these and be happy out of the box. No, it comes with a thumbhole stock. It doesn't even have the bottom tang. You have to install that. It doesn't have the rear sling swivel. You have to actually cut the receiver and install that. It does have a standard capacity magwell. That's good. It does take standard handguards. That's good. But it doesn't have provisions for either a bayonet or a cleaning rod under the barrel. That's annoying. Very annoying. It just looks wrong. And there's no reason for it, especially the cleaning rod part. So to get this where it needs to be, you have to put a lot of work into it. And even then, this is not an authentic AK-47 Type 3. And that's what most people want to make this into. And you're not really going to do that unless you totally redo the gun. It has a press and pin barrel, which is forgivable. Most guns have that. But additionally, it has the paint over phosphate finish, not blued. It has the stamped trigger guard, not machined. It has the later style lipped takedown button. And if we flip her over here, it has the later style bolt carrier and safety. What this is, it's a semi-automatic version of a late production Bulgarian AK-47, often called the AK-47 M1, which was the immediate forerunner of the AR M1 series. And that's why I have this furniture. This is authentic and period correct furniture, as weird as it seems, for this gun. So if you're going to convert one of these, oh, and you have to thread the barrel too. If you're going to convert one of these, my opinion is convert it into a Bulgarian AK-47 M1, because then you're going to get a good gun. But so many people want to make this into, say, a Russian style AK Type 3, and it's just very hard to do. I actually think the SLR 100H, because it's built from 1950s Hungarian parts, is a closer representation, and it's on the same receiver. So I've just seen a lot of people talk about these, and a lot of people ask me about converting these, and maybe I'm just kind of tired of talking about it, because it's not what it is. Now, if I still had it, believe it or not, and this is no joke, the Polytech Legend would be here. But I don't. I sold it because people really want them. That's great. I took it out one day. I also took out my MSC SLR 100H. Sorry, MSR, I think I meant to say. Anyway, no, MSC. Yeah, sorry. It's a long day. I took it out along with the Polytech, and I realized something. I like shooting the 100H so much more. I also like shooting this more than the Polytech. I like shooting all of my mill guns more. And for what people want to pay for the Polytech, I've thought, move it along to a home where it will be better and more appreciated. So as much as I don't want to put the SA93 here, it is, because frankly, later SAM 7s, they're good to go. They come with bayonet lugs, threaded barrels, they take standard mags, they take standard furniture. Some people will say the older guns have better fit and finish. They do, but it's minor, and considering how much you have to rework this to get it into configuration, I think it's easier just to give a modern gun either a new paint finish or just kind of polish it up a bit. That's just a little bit of time and energy, whereas reworking this, you need parts, gas block, front sight, new handguard retainer, or just drill it, new bottom tang, and so on and so forth. So, just my opinion, but I'm right. And with that, what is my AKM pick? Honestly, this is pretty easy. My Hungarian FEG AKM 63, and this is a kit build. I really have this in the collection out of obligation, and I believe this is the only AK I own with a US barrel in it. No, I take that back. I do have the Legion RPK, but okay, those are the only two. That's because I didn't do the build. I do actually have a Polish barrel stuck aside to put in this. I just haven't done it yet. And it is a chrome line barrel, at least. And likewise, it's just on a generic Nodak receiver, I believe, or maybe it's a Morrissey, which is fine, but it doesn't have the XY stamps. It's just because I didn't do the build, it's not to my spec. I would have done it differently. Now, I did change it up a bit. I gave it a bit more of a paint finish, because when I got it, it was phosphate, and I wanted more of the Hungarian look. And when I shot it for the first time, this buttstock developed a bit of a chip right there. Why? Just did. Old stocks. So I actually had to repair that, and that was a little annoying. I like having it. I like the look of it with the grips. I definitely don't really want to sell it unless a better build comes along, or maybe a converted SA85 or 2000M. So it's a good placeholder, but I can see myself either rebarreling it and rebuilding it on a better receiver, more authentic. Let me flip it over so you can see the markings. Or, yeah, just replacing it altogether. So, pretty easy pick. Again, I don't hate it, and it's a nice shooter. And it's kind of fun with the forward grip and everything. But, yeah, easy pick for least favorite AKM. Just because it has some compromises and things I just would not have done on the build. But, on the other hand, they're not quite enough of an annoyance to just make me immediately rebuild it. It's one of those things that keeps getting pushed further and further back in the work log. And with that, what's my RPK pick? I really like my RPKs. That's right, my Finnish Valmet M78. But hear me out. This was a bit of a compromise for a different reason. This one is, of course, in 308, which most M78s you find are in 308. There are some 223s, but the 7.62 39s are pretty uncommon to rare. And this one is on a milled receiver, and I like it because it's the late style. It's one of the last styles that Valmet ever did before closing down their production line. So I like that. The 7.62 39s that I've seen are on stamped receivers. So, nothing wrong with the stamped, but I like the milled. And a lot of them have the plastic handguard, and I like the wood. Mostly I picked this up because a guy offered a good trade for it, for one of my Swiss guns that worked out well for both of us, and he turned out to be a great gentleman about it, and it's in great shape, and it is a good, reliable shooter. So, what's the problem? Well, it really does have to do with the caliber. This was never adopted by the Finnish military, but I can accept that because neither was the 7.62 by 39, or for that matter, the 223 version. I knew it was going to happen. Big guns. So, even though the Finnish military looked at these, they never adopted any of the M78s. So, really, none of them would be military correct for Finland. But, again, I love RPKs, and I like the look of this gun. And it was made for the military. Flash hider. Even has a flip low light sight. Heavy 23-inch barrel. Very heavy, actually. Carry handle, as you see. AKM style rear sight. Thick top cover with port buffer. Neat stuff. So the caliber's not great. Now I will say, if you're going to do an AK in 308, it's nice that it does have a long barrel on a bipod. The big problem with these magazines, real big problem. For the 308s, you don't even have a universal mag. There's actually two patterns. One kind of made for the stamped receiver and one made for the milled. This came with a 30-round converted, what was it? I think it was I forget who did it. I think it was a MPC or MCP mag, and he made that in the US. It works well, but it's not original. Nice to have a big 30-round mag for it. But luckily, the seller, after I got it, hooked me up with a guy who had 3 original factory mags, which are actually converted by Valmet from Swedish AK-4 mags, so military mags. And the price was, believe it or not, good at $200 a pop. I know that's cringeworthy, but I had to have at least 2 factory mags for this, and he had 3, and I thought, what the hell? In for a penny, in for a pound. So I do have 3 mags for it, plus the 30-rounder. And that's probably as many as I'll ever get. That said, this is probably the most reliable and durable of the M78s. I've heard of 2 of the 760x39s cracking their trunnions, maybe due to overzealous heat treating. And I've heard of some issues with the 223s. They also are hard to get mags for. And they have some firing pin issues from time to time. Not common, but they happen. Again, I really like this gun. I don't plan on selling it. It goes with my other Finnish AK. Very happy to have it, but when I look at my other RPKs, I just honestly like all of them a little more because they're all either military kit builds done the way I like, or they're legitimate imports like the AES-10B. So there you have it. I think it's a bit of a sneaky one because this isn't 760x39 or 545, but at least I'm not going to offend either of those fan bases, right? But now it is time to get into 545 and my least favorite, AK-74. Maybe a bit surprising. As you know, I like Polish guns, but my WZ-88 Tantal. This is a kit build, but I would say it's done right. It has the left side selector that's not hooked up to be a safety because it just never works. It's just there for cosmetics. And it does have the original military barrel. A little corroded, but not bad. Before I got it, the guy who had it before shot it a lot. That's okay. Price was right. It's a matching kit and good shape furniture, and it does run well. So what's the problem? Well, like a lot of us, Century kind of unfortunately gave the Tantal a bad name, even though we know it's not the fault. And lots of companies like Inner Arms did perfectly good Tantal builds. It did spoil it a lot, especially considering how many otherwise nice kits Century chewed up for their project using the wrong barrel. In their defense, that was really one of the very first AK-74 type guns to have a US made barrel because it was the first ones to really be made with kits imported after '05. But I digress. So why is this here? I mean, I like the Tantal. I've owned a Tantal since at least 2004. 2 different ones over the years. Well, much like with the RPKs, it's mostly because it has very stiff competition. I mean, I couldn't put the Bulgarian SLR 105 or SLR 104 below it. Certainly couldn't do the SGO 31. And while some might put the Romanian SAR2 or PA86 below this, I don't. And part of it is the history. Romania has used their 545 guns for a very long time, whereas Poland, this was a flash in the pan. This was just and then gone. So it doesn't have a lot of service history, and they only made 25,000. So again, it's got some stiff competition. I've been very choosy about the 545 caliber guns I've kept over the years. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to give this one the lowest position. I won't sell it, but to be honest, the Baril took this and really actually made the design work. This was, and even in military service, it was a bit of a failure. Not through any fault of the gun itself, but just politics and circumstances and how long it actually took to go into production. So yeah, of that Tantal. And I'm not shit-talking all Century Tantals just before anyone thinks that. I think they're good. But I've also said many times I think the Romanian SAR2s, Wasser2s, and so on have been criminally underrated, at least up until last year. Now they're kind of going up. But yeah, if you want a Tantal, my advice, look for an Inner Arms. They did pretty good builds. And if you can, look for one with the original barrel. Then you can just avoid those kinds of issues. And with that, let's get to number 5, my Wildcard category. Number 5 is a 3-way tie for apparently guns that they didn't realize they were supposed to be designing AKs, or they missed the point. Of course, the SVD Dragunov, the Czech VZ58, and the Swiss SG552 from SIG. Okay, being a little tongue-in-cheek here to have some fun. But these are guns that people, over the years, over and over and over, call AKs. And oh boy, if that's what the designers were going for, they really missed the mark. And so, just based on that, if these were meant to be AKs, they're not very good at it. They kind of suck. But they're actually all good guns. A lot of people will say the SVD Dragunov is just an overgrown AK. They're kind of conflating it with the Romanian PSL and the Yugoslavian M76, which really are just large AKs. They use long stroke, two-lug systems. This, on the other hand, uses a short stroke gas piston with a three-lug bolt. Now, the bolt rotating system is very much inspired by Kalashnikov, but a different gas system, complete with adjustments, a wholly different style of machined receiver. It even has a built-in bolt hold open, something a Russian AK never really had. And it doesn't even have a pistol grip stock. Yeah, it doesn't even fire the same caliber. This has very little to nothing to do with the AK. Only a few accessories and things, maybe like the rear sight, are the same. But that has more to do with just similarities in Russia. And of course, this was meant to be used as a designated marksman rifle, although the Russians did consider it a sniper, just a mass-produced one. As for the VZ58, yeah, this still gets called an AK today by some, but 20 years ago, everyone just thought it was an AK variant, because it does have the lines. Sight post, gas block, the way the stock and grip are shaped, but this is kind of a false thing. This is just form follows function, because this is meant to be kind of either a light assault rifle or a heavy machine gun. Now, it does fire 7.62 by 39 like the AK, but it too is on its own machined receiver, not stamped, although of course when this was adopted, the Soviets were still technically making and using the mill gun. But it uses a striker firing system, not hammer. Totally different there. It uses a totally different bolt system with a falling wedge, blocking block. It too is short stroke, like the Dragunov, but it's non-adjustable. It actually has quite a bit of a shorter barrel, nearly an inch shorter than an AK at about 15.4 inches. And while it is threaded 14 millimeter, like most AKs, it's actually 14 millimeter right hand. And it doesn't use AK mags, instead it uses alloy mags, and it too has an automatic last round bolt hold open. So yeah, about the only thing it has in common technically with an AK is its function and its caliber. And then finally, Switzerland. Now I picked the 5.52 because it's the most AK-like of the SIGs. The original 5.50 STGW90 did use, and still does use, I should say, the long stroke gas piston, like a Kalashnikov, and two-lug rotating bolt. But it had the recoil system up front. With the 5.52, which was only made for about a decade, they actually went to an AK-style recoil system, complete with guide rod. But yeah, therein the similarities kind of stop. Now it does use rock and lock mags, with the mag release even kind of similar to an AK, but the mags are absolutely not interchangeable. This fires 5.6 millimeter GP90 or 5.56 NATO. Totally different pattern of stock. You know the deal by now. You're on this channel. And of course, they obviously spent way too much time gazing at the AR-15 or the HK if they were setting out in Switzerland to make their very own AK, because they suck at it. They need to loosen up those tolerances a lot and get a lot sloppier. Basically, their employees need to stop showing up to work sober. Well, to be fair, these all also do have reciprocating cocking handles located on the right, like an AK. Of course, that's just coincidental. a lot of guns share elements because they're designed for the same purpose. And that's kind of my point here with this hopefully fun last bit. Yeah, a lot of people will call guns AKs that they just aren't. You don't see it as bad with other things like, say, roller lock guns. People at least take the effort to distinguish SETMs and G3s, which are far more similar than a lot of this stuff to an AK. But I think it's also a way of dismissing a lot of combat guns, especially in the past. Not so much today, but you know, the era of the 80s and 90s when a lot of FUDs thought it was just communist crap. But yeah, these really do fail at being AKs because AK parts would not fit in them. Just having fun, guys. And this whole video was just for fun. I just felt like doing something less intense. And there are definitely guns that I own that I don't want to sell, but I don't find myself taking out to the range all that frequently. Sometimes it's an ammo thing. They shoot an expensive round, or they're old and fragile. Certainly that's the case with a lot of CNR stuff. I just don't want to risk breaking an extractor or a firing pin, which could cost $50 to $100 in 2 years to find a replacement on. It's just not worth it. But there are some guns that I just don't really like shooting as much as others. And since I don't have a range in my backyard, time shooting is limited. And of course the cost of ammo has been limited for a year now. And so it's kind of made me realize what I really like shooting and what I can live without. So there are some guns that kind of fall in between that I really like, but not enough to take out. And maybe I'm not 100% happy with, but not enough to sell. So I've talked about some of mine here. I'm curious if you have guns in your gun safe like that, that you like, but not 100%. You know, you're not totally sold on, but you know, if you sold them, you would regret it. And there are some guns I think that we all have and are happy to have, but if a better one comes along, we'd also be very happy to sell it and upgrade. So yeah, let's have a discussion in the comments. Those are always fun, at least for me. I hope for you, about your top lesser enjoyed AKs. Let me know. As always, if you could, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you'd like to help support the channel, please go over and check out links to the Patreon page. I've been adding a few new perks and kind of learning the ropes and tinkering with things, so it's a bit of a work in progress at the moment, but we'll get there. And I greatly do appreciate it. But if you can't, we understand. It's a tough year for a lot of people. Just, yeah, liking and sharing, subscribing. That's great. Commenting. That helps the channel quite a bit too. This is Misha, and I'll catch you very soon next time.